My name is Isabel Turner, 23 years old, born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm in my final semester of a communications program at a local community college, juggling two part-time jobs. Mornings at a campus cafe, evenings restocking shelves at a 24-hour convenience store. Every dollar I earn gets split three ways: one part for saving up to move out, one for tuition, and the rest to contribute to household expenses in the home I share with my parents and younger sister. Carly. Carly is 19, dropped out halfway through a nursing program because it was too stressful, according to my mother. In reality, it was the parties, shopping sprees, and sleeping through exams. Still, my parents treat her like she's some flawless Disney princess. And me? I'm expected to be self-reliant, reasonable, the one who holds everything together, without a single complaint. Our house sits in a quiet neighborhood in the southern part of the city. I used to think of it as a home, but now it feels more like a pressure chamber. Every time I walk through the front door, it's like stepping into a space where all my efforts go unnoticed. My father, Gerald, looks at me not with affection, but calculation, as if to ask, "What else can this daughter do for this family?" That morning started like any other. I got up at 6:30, slipped on my dark brown uniform, tied up my hair, and tiptoed downstairs for coffee. My mom, Sharon, stood at the coffee machine, eyes glued to her phone. "Morning, Mom." "Yeah, Isabel?" she replied without looking up. "Oh, and later today, make sure to drive Carly to pick up her hair dye at the salon. She already placed the order." I froze. It was my birthday. I wasn't expecting cake or expensive gifts. But at the very least, a birthday wish? Nothing. I inhaled slowly, pressed my lips together, and nodded like always. Then I noticed my laptop wasn't on the kitchen counter. My silver MacBook Air, which I'd bought 6 months ago after saving nearly a year's worth of cafe tips. I had placed it there last night after finishing an internship application to New York. "Where's my laptop?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Still focused on her phone, Mom responded in a tone so flat it was almost cruel. "Oh, your dad took it over to Wayne's place. His daughter needs a computer for school." I stood frozen. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "What? I bought that with my own money. It's mine." "Well, you still live here," she said flatly. "Everything in this house is shared property. Carly needed a new phone. Your dad traded the laptop for an iPhone for her. Makes perfect sense." I couldn't believe it. The words echoed like a fire alarm in my head. They stole from me. Not for the first time, but this time it was shameless. I clenched my jaw, grabbed my phone, and texted my dad. "Dad, why did you take my laptop without asking?" 1 minute later, he replied, "Carly needed a new phone. You should know your place, and next week you'll pay her tuition $5,500. Be grateful we feed and house you." I went numb. My phone trembled in my hands. My cheeks burned, but inside, I felt nothing. No rage, no sadness, just that sensation like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water straight into my chest. I typed back, "Not happening." His response came within seconds. "Then get out. Don't expect another dime from us." I didn't respond. I walked quietly back to my room, shut the door, locked it, and leaned my back against it. The sounds of the house buzzed beyond the walls, but I couldn't hear them anymore. I knew, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. I stayed frozen behind the locked door, clutching my phone like letting go would send me straight into a bottomless pit. My room held only a bed by the window, a few old photo frames, and the closet Carly often raided whenever she needed a surprise party dress. The laptop was gone, and my birthday had been buried under chores and eviction texts. I had endured quietly for years, believing that if I worked hard enough, someone in this family would notice, would be grateful. But in the end, I was nothing more than a walking ATM and Carly's unpaid babysitter. A new message buzzed on my phone. I didn't want to look, but I did. From Carly. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. If you can't help the family, at least don't make it harder." My chest tightened. not because of her words, but the coldness in them. She didn't even realize she was benefiting from something taken directly from me. I grabbed my small backpack and quietly opened my desk drawer. From the back corner, I pulled out an envelope I had hidden for nearly a year. Inside was $1,800 in cash, my emergency savings. I'd planned to use it for a security deposit on a studio apartment near campus. But Mom once told me, living at home saves money. Save it for something big. Turns out that something big was Carly's new phone. I messaged the only person I could think of, Lena Daniels, a classmate from freshman year who now lived with her boyfriend in Cedar Falls. Can I crash for a night or two? Something happened at home. It's bad. Message marked seen in 3 minutes. Then my phone rang. Isabel, are you okay? You sound like you just got tossed off a moving train. Because I did, just not the literal kind. I gave her a short version while packing clothes, documents, and my thesis notebook. Lena didn't ask questions, she just said one thing. Come over. My door's open. At 11 p.m., I slipped out through the back door. No one in the house noticed. Carly's bedroom light was still on, music spilling out from the Bluetooth speaker I had bought with my end-of-semester bonus. I drove my old Toyota Corolla, what my dad used to call that useless junker, through the dense April fog of Iowa. At the Southridge intersection, my phone buzzed again. From Dad. If you tell anyone about this, don't even think about coming back. I stared at the screen, my hands turning pale as I gripped the steering wheel. Then I tapped the message, held it, and hit screenshot. I wasn't planning to use it immediately, but I had learned something over the past few years. Never rely on words alone. Always keep proof. When I arrived at Lena's apartment, it was well past midnight. She and her boyfriend Josh were waiting on the third-floor landing. Lena hugged me like I had just crawled out of a hurricane. I cleared out the office room. It's not huge, but you'll be able to breathe. I nodded, still stunned that I was receiving more warmth from near strangers than from people I shared blood with. That night, curled up on a sofa by the window, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened the Notes app on my phone and started listing what I lost. Laptop at $2,000. My mother's documents. A job application. A place to live. A trust. What I still have. $1,800 in cash. A car. My email account. Evidence. Willpower. I titled the list The Restart Plan. I didn't know what life would look like after this night, but one thing was crystal clear. I wasn't going back to that house. Not when my kindness had been treated like an obligation. Not when my birthday had become the day I was traded like excess inventory. And definitely not when the only person I had left to protect was myself. I woke up around 6 a.m. in Lena's small room filled with books and sketchboards. My neck ached from sleeping sideways on the stiff armchair. Morning sunlight streamed through the cream-colored curtain, landing on my backpack in the corner. The only thing I brought when I left home. Everything else, clothes, study materials, memories, was still in the room. Carly now treated as her personal storage. Lena knocked gently and came in holding a mug of hot coffee. I made your favorite, vanilla hazelnut. You're a lifesaver. I hugged the mug like I was holding onto the last bit of warmth. After a few minutes of silence, I finally said, I need to go back and get my stuff, and I need to make things clear. I can't let them keep doing this. Lena set the mug down and stared at me. You're going to confront them alone? No, I want them to see the consequences. This time, no one gets to treat me like an ATM again. I grabbed my phone, opened the Notes app, and started listing what I needed to collect. Bank statements, all those withdrawals my dad called temporary family loans. Utility bills, insurance, all under my name since I was 19. Receipts from Carly, the 3 times I paid for car repairs, 2 repeat class fees, 1 incident where she borrowed my credit card and never paid it back. Text messages, emails, any conversation related to them borrowing my assets. I wasn't just leaving, I wanted to leave a trail, a record of the truth, not for revenge, but to protect myself if things got worse. I'm coming with you, Lena said immediately. I'll wait in the car. If you're not back in 30 minutes, I'm calling the police. We arrived at my house at 8:43 a.m. The garage light was on, which meant my dad was still home. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, gripping the room key I still hadn't been stripped of. I entered through the back, trying to keep my steps quiet. The living room looked the same as always. TV on with no one watching. My dad's coat draped over the recliner. Carly's dirty shoes in the middle of the floor. My room, once familiar, felt eerily empty. The closet was wide open. Some clothes were missing. The navy moon dress I wore for my first-year presentation was gone. In its place, Carly's hoodie was flung across my bed like a territorial marker. I didn't have time to be angry. I went straight to the desk drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside the envelope labeled Tax and Bank, I found bank statements from Wells Fargo showing multiple transfers from my account to G. Turner, my dad's name. Next, I opened the small cabinet by the corner where I kept all the bills, over 20 documents from internet to water language. Every one listed Isabel Turner, current address. I used my phone to snap a photo of each one, every number, every detail. As I turned to head to the kitchen for more documents, my dad's voice rang out behind me. "What do you think you're doing here?" I turned around, holding his gaze. "I came to collect what's mine, and the proof that I've been carrying this family for the past 4 years." He scoffed. "You think a few silly papers are going to make anyone believe you? Family is about responsibility. You're still living here. Nothing here belongs to you." I held up my phone. "Everything's recorded. I don't need people to believe me. I just need a lawyer." His face darkened. He took a step forward. I backed up, phone ready to record. "Don't do anything stupid. I'm leaving now. But if anyone in this house touches my things again, I'll come back not alone." I ran upstairs, grabbed the last 3 outfits left, shoved them into my backpack. Before leaving, I placed a handwritten note on my desk. "Long last time. Everything has a limit, even people." I slipped out through the back door, heart pounding. When I got in the car, Lena didn't ask anything. She just handed me a bottle of water and turned on some quiet music. We stayed silent the whole drive home. But in my head, the pieces of truth were falling into place. Numbers, evidence, years of being invisible. That night, back at Lena's apartment, I sat on the floor of her study, back against the bookshelf, staring at the old laptop Josh had temporarily lent me. My fingers typed, non-stop. Not because I wanted to write, but because I needed to. I needed to document everything. I needed to leave behind something they couldn't deny. I opened each image file, cross-checked it with the receipts I had just photographed that morning, and started compiling a file, The Truth According to Isabel Turner. Page 1 listed all unauthorized withdrawals from my personal account, including every borrow and forget incident from my father. It totaled nearly $5,400 over 3 years, not counting the times cash disappeared from my wallet when I left my purse in the kitchen. Page 2 outlined utility, insurance, and internet bills I had consistently paid since I turned 19, while Carly was still a high school senior and my parents insisted, "She's too young, she needs to focus on her future." Page 3 included a scanned receipt for the MacBook Air I bought, purchase date, serial number, warranty registration, and a picture of me holding the device at the downtown Des Moines store. Next to it, I added a screenshot of my dad's message. "Trade it for Carly's phone, you should be grateful." I also attached the online police report I had filed early that morning, titled Unauthorized Property Sale and Financial Coercion by Immediate Family. I knew it wasn't enough to get anyone into court, but it was a start, proof that I wasn't staying silent. I printed 2 copies of the file, placed them in clear report covers, and labeled them neatly. One stayed in my bag, the other I'd leave somewhere they couldn't ignore. The next morning, I went back to the house. Lena parked a block away. I walked the rest of the way, emotionless, holding the file. The front door was unlocked. I entered through the kitchen. The familiar room felt eerily still. My mother was making coffee. She looked up in surprise when she saw me. "You're back, Isabel?" Her tone was calm, as if the blow-up 3 days ago had been a minor misunderstanding. No, just stopping by. I set the file down on the dining table, right where she usually read the morning news on her tablet. My voice was soft, but clear. I don't have anything left to give, but I'm leaving this. You should read it. She frowned, flipped through a few pages, then looked at me with an unreadable expression. Who are you trying to threaten with this? No one. I don't need to threaten anyone. I'm just stating facts. I turned to go, but at the door I paused. Mom, I wrote clearly in the file, if anything in there isn't resolved properly, I'll send the copy to the right people. And I already have legal support. I left the sentence hanging like a silent warning and walked out. 3 hours later, while Lena and I were picking vegetables at the farmer's market, my phone rang. Caller ID, Carly. I didn't answer. A text came through instantly. What did you leave behind? Mom's freaking out. Dad's calling a lawyer. Are you trying to blow this up? Another longer one. Why are you doing this? Is it over that laptop or are you just jealous? Do you even know how much stress you've caused this family? I stared at the screen. Those words didn't hurt anymore. Not even a little. That evening, I emailed a copy of the file to the legal aid clinic for Iowa student victims. An old high school friend was doing her internship there. I only wrote one line. I need advice about being financially exploited by family. I have clear evidence. Please guide me. The next morning, the reply came quickly. We'll arrange an online consultation next week. This is the first step. And you are not alone. I reread that last line 3 times. That night, for the first time in weeks, I played music in my room and let myself relax. Not because it was over, but because I knew I had started something that could not be undone. Less than 24 hours after I left the file, my phone started vibrating nonstop, as if someone were trying to pull me back into the same old spiral. The first message came from Mom. Isabel, this doesn't need to go that far. I know you're upset, but this is a family matter. You shouldn't be making it legal. An hour later, her voice was on voicemail, hoarse, dramatic. You're hurting everyone, don't you see? Your father hasn't been able to eat or sleep. Carly, she's panicking. I hung up. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was tired of the role reversal game. They hurt me for years, but the moment I spoke up, all eyes turned to me, like I was the cause. By late afternoon, Carly called. I hesitated a few seconds before picking up. What are you doing? I'm not do anything, Carly. I just left the truth. That pile of papers? Dad got so mad he smashed his phone on the floor. Mom's been crying all morning. Are you trying to destroy this family? I leaned against the wall, kept my voice steady. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just done allowing myself to be exploited. Carly went quiet for a few seconds. Then her tone softened, sounding uncertain. You know, when Mom read the part about you paying for my car repair last year, I realized I never asked. I thought Dad covered it, or maybe it came from the scholarship. I closed my eyes. There it was, the crack. What scholarship? I asked softly. The education fund Grandma and Grandpa set up for the both of us when we were kids. Dad told me I had full access. I used it for freshman and sophomore year, but yesterday I overheard Mom saying something about not realizing both funds were gone. When I asked, they clammed up. My heart skipped. You mean my fund was used for you too? I didn't know, Isabel, I swear. I thought it was mine. I thought it was split evenly. I let out a laugh, thin and sharp like a paper cut. Nothing was split. I juggled 2 jobs while you went to school on money I didn't even know was missing. And you call that family? Carly didn't argue. She exhaled. Before, I thought you were just mad about a laptop, but now I get it. They weren't just unfair to you. They lied to me too. I said nothing, let the silence spread like ink on paper. What are you going to do next? Carly asked after a pause. I looked up at the ceiling, where Elena's soft yellow light cast quiet shadows. I don't know yet, but I'm not going back. I'm going to reclaim what's mine, and if they don't cooperate, I'll take it further. That night, I received an email from Lauren, my friend interning at the Iowa Student Legal Aid Organization. Isabel, I've read your file. I showed it to my supervisor. They want to set up a meeting with you next Tuesday to go over everything. They say your case has strong legal standing. I sat in silence for several minutes after reading it. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because being believed after years of being dismissed felt strangely unfamiliar. The next morning, I woke up to a message from someone I didn't expect. From Grandma. Ruth Turner. Can you come see me? I've heard what's going on, and I think it's time I shared some truths. I stared at that message, heart pounding. Grandma Ruth, my dad's mother, had always stayed out of family conflicts. She lived in Cedar Rapids, almost a 2-hour drive from Des Moines, and was seen as neutral. She never took sides, never got involved. But if she was the one reaching out, I called her back. She answered instantly. Isabel, thank you for calling back. I want to see you. I've kept quiet about many things for too long, but maybe silence isn't right anymore. Her voice didn't waver. It wasn't frail as I remembered. It sounded like she had been waiting for this conversation for a very long time. I drove to Cedar Rapids on a gray Saturday afternoon. It wasn't raining, but the sky was gloomy enough to weigh heavy on the heart. Ruth Turner's house sat at the end of a cobblestone road, surrounded by maple trees that had just begun to turn. I had never been here alone. The last time I clearly remembered, I was 14, and Carly was sitting in Grandma's lap asking for cookies. She opened the door before I even reached the bell, as if she'd been standing there waiting, still the same petite figure, her white hair neatly pinned up and sharp eyes that hadn't dulled despite being nearly 80. And come in, Isabel. I've made tea. We sat in the living room, surrounded by classic landscape paintings and a faint scent of lavender in the air. She handed me a cup of mint tea and said nothing for the first few minutes, just looked at me like she was seeing someone clearly for the first time under the right light. I read the file you left for your parents. I nodded. I also talked to Carly. I looked up. And you believe me? I don't need to believe. The truth lies in the numbers. She got up, walked into her office, then returned with a thick envelope. Placing it on the table, she pushed it toward me. Open it. I think you should have known this a long time ago. Inside was a copy of a trust agreement dated back to 2005, the year I turned 3. The trust was established by my grandfather, Thomas Turner. The initial amount was $30,000, split evenly into 2 separate trusts, one for me, one for Carly. Your grandfather always believed in education. Before he passed, he appointed me as co-trustee. But when he died, your father convinced me to relinquish my role, saying the next generation should take responsibility. I was too weak to fight back then. I sat in silence. Every word hit like a nail into the already shattered foundation of my trust. Gerald promised he wouldn't touch your education fund. But when Carly went to college, the money started disappearing. You were never informed about this fund, were you? I shook my head. Said we didn't qualify for financial aid, so I worked part-time, took out student loans, and lived at home to save money. I believed him. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said slowly, Gerald used your trust to cover Carly's second-year tuition after she lost her scholarship. Nearly all your fund was drained in just 18 months. I wasn't shocked anymore, just an empty space carved deeper inside my chest. And Carly, she didn't know, she added. She thought that was her share. You think she's selfish, but she was deceived too. I leaned back in the chair, my hands tightening around the cup. What do you plan to do? Ruth sat up straight. I called your grandfather's attorney, the one who drafted the original trust. We're requesting a full financial audit, and if necessary, we'll go to court. That last part stopped me cold. You mean, sue my father? Not for revenge, just for clarity. You can't move forward if the past keeps weighing you down. I nodded, though my mind hadn't caught up with everything yet. And Carly? If she truly wants to make things right, she'll find a way. She paused, then said sharply but quietly, "If not, she's no different from Gerald." Before I left, she handed me a scanned copy of the trust documents and a meeting notice with Mr. Raymond Ellis, the family lawyer, for next Wednesday at his office in downtown Des Moines. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." I left Cedar Rapids after sunset, the golden hour lighting up one side of the road. The file sat on the passenger seat beside me. My heart was quiet, but no longer cold, because for the first time in years, someone was standing with me. And for the first time in my life, I knew one thing for sure. They weren't going to get away with this quietly. I moved out of Lena's apartment early the following week, after Mrs. Ruth called to inform me that she had just purchased a small unit in the Beaverdale neighborhood, less than a 15-minute drive from my campus. "You need a decent place to begin again," she said, her voice gentle but resolute. I was about to refuse, but she added, "It's not a favor, Isabel, it's an investment." The apartment sat on the second floor of a red brick triplex with a large window facing a small park and an open kitchen topped with light gray granite counters. I never thought I'd cry over a kitchen, but when I placed the first cup on the shelf and didn't hear anyone say, "Stop making a mess," I actually broke down. Josh helped me reinstall the old hard drive into the laptop I had reclaimed. My dad's neighbor, Mr. Wallace, had returned it after realizing what had really happened. "I didn't know they took it from their daughter," he wrote on a slip of paper. "Truly sorry." No embellishments. I appreciated that more than any excuse my parents could have given. When I powered it on and saw the folder titled Thesis Final Drafts, it felt like recovering a piece of my soul that had been abandoned. All the files were intact: job portfolios, recommendation letters, writing samples. I took screenshots, then backed them up in 3 different cloud drives, almost like I was afraid someone might take them again. A few days later, I applied for a part-time marketing assistant position at a startup called Maple and Crest, focused on educational technology. I found the job posting on a student bulletin board and submitted my application that same night. The next morning, I got a call from the CEO. "Tasha." "Nope." "I was impressed by how you presented your materials," she said. "Clean, clear, and honest. Can you come in for an interview this afternoon?" I arrived 20 minutes early, wearing an old white blouse, carefully ironed, carrying the laptop that now held a kind of battle scar. The interview wasn't like any I'd had before. Tasha didn't ask about grades or awards. She just looked at me and asked, "When was the last time you overcame an unfair situation?" I looked at her and told part of my story. Not to complain, but because I've learned that some wounds stop bleeding only when they're finally named. 3 days later, I received a job offer. The pay wasn't high, but the hours were flexible and the environment was professional. I was set to begin the following week. On the same time, Lauren introduced me to a therapist named Dr. Amy Heller, who had worked with many clients dealing with financial manipulation and families. Our first session was in a cozy office with thick upholstered armchairs and a large bookshelf in the corner. "I'm not here to blame anyone," I said as I sat down. "Good," she smiled. "I'm not here to teach you that either. But we will explore how you learn to stay silent, and why now it matters that you speak." I didn't respond right away, but that day, for the first time, I talked about being 16 when I applied for a full scholarship and my dad showed zero interest. When I won the Iowa State Speech Award and no family came. When I discovered Carly had used my credit card to buy her prom dress and Mom just said, "She just borrowed it." We met every Friday at 3 p.m., and gradually the broken pieces started to make sense. I hadn't just been financially exploited. I had been taught that my worth was defined by how much I sacrificed for others. By the end of the month, I got an email from Tasha offering me my first solo project, designing a media campaign for a scholarship program targeting underprivileged students. I hesitated for a second before replying yes, but this time not out of fear of missing a chance. because I knew I was ready to lead it. That evening, while making coffee in my tiny kitchen, I got a text from Carly. "Are you okay? I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry." I stared at the screen, didn't reply right away, because my life no longer revolves around forgiveness. It revolves around rebuilding myself, one decision at a time. From a small apartment, an old laptop, to the first job held by someone learning to stand without needing anyone's permission. 1 month after my first meeting with attorney Raymond Ellis, the formal hearing about my trust fund was held at Polk County Court. I arrived early, wearing a navy new suit borrowed from Lauren. It fit eerily well. Carly sat beside me, clutching her purse, lightly made up but with eyes red from sleeplessness. Across the room were my parents. My father sat with arms crossed and a frozen expression, while my mother dabbed at the corners of her eyes with a tissue whenever someone glanced her way. But this time, no one bought the tears. When the judge requested a document review, Raymond presented everything clearly. Evidence of the unauthorized withdrawals from the trust, banking records, testimony from the original overseers, my grandparents, and finally a copy of my father's false declaration submitted to the fund's governing body. The court acknowledges that Mr. Gerald Turner unlawfully used the entire amount belonging to Isabel Turner without beneficiary consent and intentionally concealed the fund's existence from the rightful trustee. There was no need for a rebuttal. The evidence was undeniable. The court ruled, all misappropriated funds, totaling $28,400, must be reimbursed to Isabel within 90 days. Gerald Turner is permanently banned from handling any future family trusts. The remaining trust balance will be overseen by an independent manager, supervised by a court-appointed attorney. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. That formal recognition in clear daylight and legal language was enough to close a painful chapter. After the hearing, Carly followed me out into the hallway. "You don't have to forgive me, but I'm grateful you let me be there. You could have kept me away, but you knew I needed to understand." I turned to her. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasure. It means choosing not to let it define everything else. Carly nodded. We didn't hug. But for the first time, between two women raised to compete for love, something softened. In June, I received an official raise from Maple and Crest and the chance to coordinate a small project. Tasha placed a hand on my shoulder during a Monday morning meeting and whispered, "You didn't just make it through, you're paving the way." That was the day I received a second email from Ms. Ruth. "Dear Isabel, if you don't mind, I'd like to gift you something. The little wooden cabin in Okoboji. Your grandfather used to take me camping there in the summers. I don't use it anymore, but it deserves to hold warmth again. I drove to Okoboji that weekend with Josh, Lena's boyfriend, now my close friend. It took us 3 hours, but when I opened the wooden door to the cabin by the lake, I understood instantly. This wasn't just a gift. It was a preserved piece of my family's soul. The cabin had a porch, a fireplace, and old framed photographs lining the hallway. On a shelf sat my grandfather Thomas's journal, pages of summer memories with Ruth, entries about repainting the roof by hand, taking Carly and me to catch fireflies. I didn't remember those moments, but I could feel them alive in the wood grain. I decided to keep the cabin's essence intact, but renovate part of it to become a summer writing retreat for students studying creative writing or communications, people like me, who once needed a place to hear their own voice. A month later, on my 24th birthday, I hosted a small dinner in my Beaverdale apartment. Lauren was there, and so were Tasha, Josh, Lena, and Carly. We made homemade pizza, drank chilled soda, and laughed until our stomachs hurt over trivia games I had created. When it came time for cake, Carly stood up and held out a small envelope. "I don't have a big gift, but I've been working part-time at the campus library. Here's the first $600 toward what I owe you. And if you'll have me, I'd love to help you fix up the cabin in Okoboji during break." I looked at my sister and nodded. No big speech, no dramatic reconciliation. That night, I stepped onto the balcony with a drink in hand, staring at the quiet city sky. What filled my heart wasn't the fact that I had reclaimed everything, but that I was no longer losing myself. And this journey ultimately wasn't about leaving it all behind, but about how I came back, whole, one step at a time. Isabel's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes freedom begins the moment you dare to say enough to the very people you once trusted. In real life, many are exploited under the guise of family duty until they finally rise up to reclaim their worth and the right to lead their own lives. Isabel didn't just recover the finances that were taken from her, she found herself, her freedom, and a future built on her own choices, not blind sacrifice. What do you think about Isabel's journey? What would you do if you were in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, thought-provoking stories about family and life.